And I still remember I just sort of get goosebumps. I was so excited. And and then when we started our church and we were meeting in the Y building and over on South Street, and they let us put up a sign that said temporary location, our church name, and across the bottom it said Pastor Carl Godwin. And I would be driving, somewhere, and I would go out of my way to drive by that sign and just rubberneck and look at that. Look at that. Pastor Carl Godwin. Just about run into somebody. I mean, I was so excited. And I can't tell you how excited I am. Mickey Mantle said, happy is the man who gets paid for doing what he loves to do. And I love to be pastor. I mean, to me, it's the greatest thrill, a greatest honor, and the most wonderful thing. And I guess I better preach. Number one, what qualities make a pastor? First of all, a vital personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Therefore, I exhort the elders, Peter says, among you, as your fellow elder and witness of the sufferings of Christ, and partaker also of the glory that is to be revealed. Peter says, I exhort the elders. I exhort the pastors. I am a pastor too, he says, as a fellow pastor and a witness of the sufferings of Christ. Wow, think of that. Peter literally saw Jesus suffer. He saw him at the trial. He saw him on the cross. And he writes and says, I too am an elder. I'm a fellow pastor like you. And then he says in verse 2, shepherd the flock. I think he has to be thinking back to when he denied Jesus, you remember. And then Jesus, I think Peter just pretty well said, that's it. He's done with me, I'm sure, for I denied him. And then Jesus gave him a recommission and called him again. And it's in John 21. And Jesus said to him, he said, Peter, do you love me more than these? More than what? The fish and the nets? And he said, yes, Lord, you know I love you. He said, tend my lambs. And he said a second time, do you love me? And he said, yes, Lord, you know I love you. And he said, shepherd my sheep. And he said a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said, Lord, you know all these things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, tend my sheep. You see, 3 times Jesus said, take care of my lambs, take care of my sheep, shepherd my flock. You see that? And so he is talking to Peter about the importance of the flock. And Peter felt disqualified, but Jesus recommissioned him. If there's one thing I could say to pastors, I would say this: cultivate a close relationship with Jesus Christ, and then just share what he gives you. Just preach out of the overflow. Just walk with God. Develop your relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, let me say this to you. You're not a pastor, but I'll tell you something. This is where it's at. This is the greatest thing you can do. And you still have people that you influence, and you have people that you want to touch for Jesus Christ. Well, the best thing you can do is develop your relationship with Jesus Christ, and then share what he gives you. And he will do that. He will give you that which you need to share to help somebody else. The first quality that we must have is a vital relationship with Jesus Christ. In fact, if you look on our bulletin, it says it every Sunday, that our goal here is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. How can I lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ if I am not in a growing relationship with Jesus Christ? How can you help other people to have a growing relationship with Jesus Christ if you're not in a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. You cannot give what you do not have. That's the number one piece of advice that I would give to pastors. Develop a relationship with Jesus Christ and share what he gives you. Number two, the second quality that makes a pastor is a loving concern for the flock. A loving concern for the flock. Look what Peter says to the overseers. Look what Peter says to the pastors. Verse 2, shepherd the flock. Shepherd the flock of God among you. The flock image is throughout the Scripture. We find it in Psalm 23, Psalm 100, Isaiah, Luke, John 10. Jesus said he's the shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. He contrasts himself to the hireling. Acts 20, Hebrews 13, here in 1 Peter and 1 Peter 2, Revelation 7. The flock image. God compares us to a flock. And let me say this to you. The relationship of a shepherd to his sheep is a little bit foreign to us. We're in cowboy country, where they raise cattle or whatever. But in the East, the shepherd and his sheep, the relationship was different. I mean, much different than cattle and cowboy. And it was a different kind of relationship. And what God is, the shepherd loved the sheep. The shepherd knew the sheep by name. The shepherd would lead the sheep and provide for the sheep and care for the sheep. And here's what God is saying to us. God is saying that one of the most beautiful relationships this side of heaven, one of the most beautiful relationships on this earth ought to be between pastor and people. Ought to be between pulpit and the pew. And I'm sorry to say that in many churches, we've seen it's not always that way, And the church I grew up in, there was a great spirit. There was a good spirit, but it was a strange experience. It was a little church, a real little church. And, they voted on everything. It was incredible. And every time you vote, you divide people. And so there was sort of some, and then the pastor stayed 2 or 3 years, and that was about it. And so you just got to know them, just got to love them, and they were gone. Another one would come. And it was a strange setup. And I knew there was something that wasn't firing on all pistons, And it wasn't. It just wasn't. And there, I'm sorry to say that not all churches have what we have here that is so blessed and so incredible. And not that what we have is perfect. I don't mean that, but it is awesome. And so God says, I want you to shepherd the flock of God. And you do that. He tells us a little bit how. Look at, first of all, God calls us a flock. Look at characteristics of sheep. First of all, sheep are clean. They're a clean animal. He didn't call us pigs. Won't go there. But they're a clean animal. And then here's another characteristic of sheep. They flock together.